Alright, are all teams ready to go? How about ready? Hi everyone, welcome to the grand finals of KDU 2017 Pro-Ams. Congratulations to the teams that made it to the finals. On OG we have Taylor's AZ. On we have Eksperiimania. On CG we have Alradhi. On CO we have IIUM. I'll be your chair. My name is Patrick, formerly from UM. On the panel is Ashley from UTP, Huzani formerly from UTP, Patrick from SAS, and also Farhan from UTP. Before we proceed to the interesting speeches, here are some friendly reminders. If you need to use the toilet or leave, please don't do so with the door that is standing on, or that door, leave through the back door. Also, if you need to talk, please don't. If you really need to talk or communicate with someone on the phone, please get out as well. Please try to keep cheering, booing, if no booing, cheering, and any form of encouragement to a minimum as not to disrupt the speakers and also the people judging them, because obviously you want your favorite team to win, right? So you don't want us to listen to the wrong things. All right, without further ado, can we please invite the Prime Minister? Here.
So like that. Just like that. Just
use the mic.
Oh, use the mic. Like that.
Okay. Can you hear me? Death is the loss of a human life. It is the loss of a part of our community in such a unique way that loss is irreplaceable. To have parties where we artificiate this environment of joy and happiness does no justice to the acknowledgement of loss, but more importantly, harms those who are left behind on them. Our position in this debate is that going away parties are harmful to the way we conceptualize death and have harms the grieving process of families. But we do believe that in our world, when someone once assisted suicide, the substance will be administered by a doctor. Second thing, at the time of death, family members can be present, but they shouldn't be requested. There shouldn't be requests by the family members. So our side, we believe that the standards is, firstly, whether which side provides better the perception and the way we treat death. Second thing, whether which side provides the better deals with the grievances of the family. And now I'll proceed with my first argument. Why going away parties create a harmful perception of death? First thing, in going away parties, it is almost true that the person who is dying will decide to create an artificial environment where they expect the family members to be happy, to cheer, and to not exhibit any signs of sadness. When the people who are dying, they create an environment that is so happy and full of celebrations. We think that is unjust. Firstly, why we think that is unjust? Because that this associates ending of someone's life with happiness. How can we afford that? Secondly, even though it is time that the person who is dying wants to see happiness before they die, it is still unjust, because even that person was dying, he's degrading of the nature of his own death. Reason why it is degrading the nature of his own death? In going away parties, there's no acknowledgement of pain, no suffering from loss. There must be some sadness from loss. If we treat death with much happiness at the end of it, it doesn't recognize the fact that the death of a person decreases the happiness of or the identity of a community, because the community loses a personal identity. So the conclusion from this argument is we must associate death with sadness, or at least not celebrating it. We think that because it dignifies the fact that there is indeed a loss in our world, in this world. So happiness in a going away party pretends as if the loss of someone has no impact on reality, and we think that is not true. And second argument, I would say that it brings a harmful effect towards the grieving of the families. First, the natural reaction to death isn't happiness. People lose the people who are most important towards them, whether or not it is a co-worker who you work with, or a brother who literally be there everything with you. This means that people always react with death with sadness. So going away parties, it coerces the family members to opt in a way of reacting to death that harms them. And why we say that this is harmful? First, the fact that the family are forced to throw a party, to celebrate, to smile. This is like masking of grievances, causes so much psychological damage to the family. This is because they can't relate the sadness that they feel from losing you as a person. Conveying this sadness is most important, and I will tell you why the reasons we must convey this kind of sadness. Firstly, family members know if his loss meant something to me. Secondly, no crying rule literally forces family to create an artificial version of themselves for this person who is dying. And second way, why it is coercive? It is coercive in a manner because the going away parties, it makes the family to administer the substances, and the family members will always say, okay, yes, because they won't go against the last will of the dying person. But upon administering the substance, the family members have to live with the guilt of knowing that they committed an act, and the act is ending the life who was done by them. And even the person who wants them to administer the substance because they feel more comfortable with parents doing that. The people who are doing it will always associate themselves with the losing of his loved one.
So, question, right? So, if the person allows you to cry and asks the doctor to do it, would you then start being okay with going away parties?
There's not a burden to be put by us, and I will continue with the impacts. The impacts the harmful impacts will, firstly, for a long time the families were trying to block up memories of the death of their loved one. And secondly, they will always have to live with the fact that they are portraying themselves in a false manner to the loved one. And the conclusion from this second argument is that the loved one, the family members that are left behind, are irreparably harmed by a going away parties. This is unrepaired. It cannot be repaired anymore. And with this, I would like to say that death is unfortunate, but remembering death with celebration denies the fundamental human expression of loss. And our side, we say that we cannot stand for that. Thank you.
Thank the Prime Minister for that speech. Can we please invite the Leader of Opposition? Yeah.
Wait, do I have to hold the mic? Can I not use the mic? Use the mic.
Oh, I cannot hear you.
There were multiple instances of nuances that the speaker before me missed out. Number one, as to how in which these parties are celebrated. Yeah, it's fake, but it's better than the instances where they suddenly pass away, or when they commit suicide without even telling or having the opportunity to communicate with the people who are alive at the end of the day. You can't tell me that it's worse off without actually engaging with the worst case scenario or the comparative that exists in the world we live in today. Sure, going away parties are fake, but they give happiness, not only for individuals who want to commit suicide, but the very family members that your side of the house wanted to protect, the very family members that you wanted to give closure to at the end of the day. Few arguments in my speech. Most of my rebuttals will be integrated upon these arguments, but number one, or like the one thing that doesn't fit in, is that he told us that it's degrading the nature of this person's death. We don't see why you have a moral arbiter to set what standards as what his nature of death should be. It should be up to that individual who wish to commit suicide. If that individual wants his death to be celebrated with a going away party, then let that individual do so. Let that individual feel like his death actually meant something to the world. Let him celebrate his life, even if you're short. Let him do what he wants to do and die peacefully at the end of the day. One big argument with multiple levels of analysis from this. Number one, how do you give avenue for closure for individuals? And this directly clashes with the second argument that came up from the Prime Minister. If you die suddenly, or you die committing suicide alone, then the ability for family members to get closure is harder, because you don't have the ability to tell those individuals who wanted to commit suicide that they love them. They didn't have the opportunity to talk about the amazing things that that individual had gone through in his past life, what this individual did, the point in which he was alive. All those kinds of things actually increases the ability for family members and friends to actually gain some form of closure, because they get to talk about this individual. They get to remember this individual, even if it was for a short time. That short time is enough to reduce the amount of pain that these family members will have to go through at the end of the day. This is an easy way for us, or easy way to reduce the burdens of these individuals. Number two, let the victims die in peace. Let them go the way in which they want to go themselves, because they want to feel like they're happy. They want to feel like their life actually meant something to those other individuals. Seeing their faces in their party also give the ability for them to apologize at the point in which they did do something wrong. So it's an ability for them to know that no one hated them when they died, but it's actually ability for them to feel some form of happiness, because people are celebrating his death. This is important. You need to give individuals that urgency to their life. Because here's the comparative, here's the nuances to assisted suicide. If you don't have this party, they're probably going to commit suicide themselves anyway, or they're just going to die. At least with this party, there's an ability for us to spend that time with that individual. That individual also feels happy because they can connect with their family members and their friends. Those are the kinds of benefits that you will not attain under your side of the house. Your individual that wants to commit suicide, your individual that's suffering from depression will die living with depression without any form of closure for him or his family members at the end of the day. Before I move on, are there any POIs?
What can the alternative be? A world in which there is a planned assisted suicide, family members get together, but you can't have a go-away party with terms and the artificial celebration?
Yeah, because the scale of the benefits that we attain for those individuals and the ability for your family members to get closure is better under our side of the house. But if you really want that under your side, then it's a bit contradictory, right? Because you still want people to be around you when you die, you still want people to smile or whatever. I don't understand. It's kind of contradictory or principally inconsistent under that side of the house. The third thing they will tell you is that we actually celebrate that. I'll take one later. If we don't do this, this individual dies alone. This individual does not have an opportunity to correct whatever wrongs that he may have committed. People will die hating this individual, and this individual can't do anything about it because they have left the earth already. At least this gives them an opportunity to say sorry. This gives them the opportunity to forgive others in other individuals as well. If anything, that's what it means to have an identity, especially for an individual. That benefit is not attained under that side of the house. The other thing that we will tell you as to why these parties are needed, or why these parties are just as what the Prime Minister didn't want to tell you about, is that we have to recognize that you'll never be able to throw a party ever again. They'll never get the happiness of having their first child. They'll never get the happiness of getting married or celebrating any more birthdays after that. We think it's only fair for us to give this individual that opportunity to feel that happiness, that opportunity to celebrate something in his life. And we feel that it's completely justified for that individual. Sure.
Broadly speaking, do you think
of suicide is something that is regrettable or is something that you should celebrate all of the time?
Okay, so like I don't think the debate is so much about how we can reduce suicide or suicide will increase, because these are the individuals that are going to commit suicide anyway because of circumstances that force them to do so. Whether or not they are terminally ill, or whether or not they're just going to die like from other circumstances or other complications. So I don't see how suicide increases, but at least we make the ability for them to leave the earth a much easier way, or a much easier way for them to do so. That is a part and parcel of life. People need to recognize that. They need to stop treating that as a sad thing, especially when we can change their mentality right now. When we celebrate whatever lives that these individuals have faced. That is how you can reduce sadness for your family members that you wanted to talk about at the end of the day. When you give this individual a control and urgency, that's when you can fulfill that individual's desires and identity. That is how you make their life less saddening, or less like you don't commit suicide in a bad manner or in a sad manner. We rather trade off any harms that's what I want to talk about. If you can prioritize the fulfillment of this individual's identity. If you really wanted to have assisted suicide but not have a going away party, that individual will never gain any form of happiness. That individual will die and you can't do anything about it. You can't help this individual in any way whatsoever. If you really wanted to reduce sadness also, like your funeral still happen, so these individuals are still gonna like suffer, they're still gonna cry over their dead body. But it's better when knowing that they had the opportunity to interact with this individual before their funeral, before the individual finally passed away and left the earth. This going away party is a perfect opportunity for that individuals, not only because of the fake nature, but it's the nature in which they realize that they can all be happy that this individual is still here for today to celebrate their death. Whether or not it's with balloons and fake smiles, at least that individual gets that benefit that wouldn't have been gotten under your side of the house. Because in a funeral, you will never get the ability to interact with that individual. We beg to oppose.
Thank the leader of opposition for that speech. Can we please invite the Deputy Prime Minister? Here.
You all sound like you're dying.
Probably why a one-worded response to a POI is insufficient for the opening opposition to deal, considering that if given an opportunity to engage, is that the vast majority of circumstances where suicide, assisted suicide occurs isn't in cases of when people are terminally ill. In fact, if all opposition wants to defend in this debate is only terminally ill people, ladies and gentlemen, then there are so many people that are actually suicidal that in your debate still accrue all the harms of not talking to their families, not getting closure, all the harms that occur on the opposition bench still exist, ladies and gentlemen. The people that are depressed, clinically depressed, ladies and gentlemen, ultimately suicidal, the individuals that find themselves in extreme hurt in many circumstances. In those particular situations, those are the individuals that we don't end up reflecting on our positions and how those people came to those circumstances in the first place. How will closing government enter this debate? We will extend this debate in threefold. We think at this point in the debate, a lot of the material that's been discussed has been relatively low impact, because it's quite speculative in regards to what people feel marginally happy with, marginally less happy, or maybe have some closure or not closure, both on the OG and the OO. We think that the first thing is that we think this is absolutely critical for us as a society to reflect as to why these people wanted to commit suicide to begin with, and to ensure that no further victims are created as a result of those social structures and the gaps in those social structures to begin with, ladies and gentlemen. The second thing is that we think that in extension of whether or not people deal with grief better, we think in actual consequence, because while opening government told us that it's an injustice to their memory, we think that maybe it compounds some sadness. We think this fundamentally is important for people to be able to reconstruct how to move on and how to not limit their lives further into the future, ladies and gentlemen. We think those consequences were what was missing from the opening discussion in regard to how people can actually make their lives better beyond the grief or sadness that we've talked about so far in this debate. First thing is, will people be able to reflect on their complicity in this circumstance? Opening government told us that the guilt that people experience from assisting them in suicide will compound their sadness. We think that's fine. But what's more impactful in this circumstance is that the celebration that you go through this particular mechanism, that the people around you celebrate your death, don't reflect upon the loss in their community, don't reflect upon the kind of loss that they experience in this circumstance, but also, in extension of guilt, don't think about what their complicity was as to why this person commits suicide to begin with. At funerals, at memorials, ladies and gentlemen, people ask themselves, it's such a regretful thing. Why did they commit this suicide? How did they get this bad? What did we do wrong? Finally, people self-blame. And we think that self-blame is good, ladies and gentlemen, and opening opposition has told us why that's a bad thing. Because that self-blame is critical in people assessing whether or not, number one, was there sufficient mental health services to ensure that individuals wanted or didn't want to commit suicide to begin with, or whether or not you were there for individuals as a society to make sure that individuals that were extremely hurt and experienced a loss, whether you were there for them or not. As a society, what we mean to that girl, ladies and gentlemen, that we call fat over and over again, like people that experience bullying at school. Those social structures are typically what pushes individuals into suicide in the vast majority of cases, and we think that if truly that those are the vast majority of cases, ladies and gentlemen, then those are the instances where society deeply needs to reflect upon their insecurities, their insufficiencies in dealing with those problems at the end of the day. If we don't at the end of the day, then society goes to these funerals, or families go to these funerals, celebrate their death fundamentally, and then think to themselves, okay, it was great, happy. People have a fundamental aversion in taking responsibility for their actions in many circumstances of loss or negativity. People don't take guilt.
personal guilt very well and personal responsibility. What more in an instance where people are able to distract themselves with alcohol, jovial celebrations, and instances where they are able to think to themselves that they're not responsible, this person wanted it and I'm helping them do something that they really, really want on their side of the house, ladies and gentlemen. The people, and why my PR was relevant is because most of these individuals don't consent meaningfully into these choices anyway, ladies and gentlemen. These are individuals that are victims of circumstances. There are much more to live for a lot of the time, and fundamentally fixing those problems allows us to ensure that more victims of circumstances that don't meaningfully consent into the choices of assisted suicide in a vast majority of cases never occur again. We think that's an impactful discussion to have in this particular debate, because then we can have an actual discussion about how we change people's lives, how we help or hurt individuals that don't meaningfully consent in the status quo, ladies and gentlemen. We think that's important. Second extension, we think it's also incredibly important to discuss how do we deal with grief beyond just talking about whether or not we're sad or happy. The consequences are not just the injustice to the memory of the deceased or the momentary sadness or grief that a person feels. It extends further to two levels. The first is that people need to understand how to deal with loss in order for them to be able to move on and deal with their circumstances right now. Individuals are often in denial about the loss that they experience. For example, the inability for you to be able to comprehend that the loss of your husband means that also losing an emotional support structure in your life. The ability for you to cry on his shoulder every single time you've had a bad day. The ability for me to call up my dad every time I feel that I didn't do very well in an exam, ladies and gentlemen. Those little things that fundamentally craft my social and emotional support structure in society every single day need to be comprehended. It can only be comprehended at the point which you appreciate the loss that you have experienced, so that you know what steps can you take to move forward in order to fix and as well replace or grow in a way to make sure you can compensate for those losses at the end of the day. People become emotionally challenged at a point which I wasn't even offered upon information. People don't even fundamentally become challenged, ladies and gentlemen. People don't end up actually moving on in experiencing or allowing themselves to find alternative ways of dealing with their grief, dealing with their support structures, creating new support structures in order for them to move on. It could be as minuscule as of being in denial of your grief, ladies and gentlemen, and never finding a different partner. It could be that having father issues as you grow up into how you create relationships with other people. It could even be the reclusive, depressed individual at home that hasn't dealt with the fact that, yes, I've lost this individual, ladies and gentlemen, but fundamentally this is one portion of my life that I can comprehend, rather than just not thinking about it. Just party up, just drink, and don't think about the grief that you have experienced and deal with that particular grief, ladies and gentlemen. We think in that circumstance, people are extremely limited in their future life options, not just the momentary sadness, not just the momentary grief that we feel in the opening half, but more importantly, the objective life experiences that everyone else will be limited from moving on to the future. Surely this debate is about the vast majority of instances, ladies and gentlemen, of individuals that just have to commit suicide because of the circumstances that they were in. The question is, how do we help these individuals? We haven't found those answers in the opening half. We will not find them in the opposition bench, and that is why we must vote for closing government. Thank you very much.
Thank you, member of Now for that speech. Shall we please invite the member of Op here.
Let's get into this. I'll deal with closing government singular extension first, and then I'll move on to opening gov. My extensions will be integrated. First, who gets a better conversation in terms of talking about the conditions through which people go through that leads to suicides and how can we help them? So closing government's case is only applicable in a world where the going away party is so overpowering that like post-death or at any point in time, people don't talk about these things. It's not as if, and opening government rightly pointed out, that the grief that we feel towards death is natural, that it's something that is like people feel regardless of the going away parties itself. That means a lot of these questions get asked regardless of whether or not you have a singular night of a party for throwing away for this person. So I think that's a very, very like convenient characterization that this like means people just become happy and don't question things. But secondly, I would suggest that in fact we do it better. Why? And this also, by the way, also tends to the grief argument to a certain extent. So opening government says, like, we can have families gathering and have these conversations, and that's great. But within closing oppositions, that's the beauty of the going away party for these people. Because these are the people who are absolutely suffocated by the continuous sadness around them. And that means that they don't feel like themselves anymore. They don't feel like they can meaningfully talk to their friends or family without them sobbing at some point in time, have a meaningful conversation without them crying. That means these people actually recluse themselves from opening up their hearts and talking to their friends and families in a meaningful way that they feel that they're also free to talk without being pitied by them and being saddened by, and like them or being overcome by grief by them. I think the going away party, what it uniquely does is it allows this person to be able to open up in an environment where they feel safe because everyone's happy, and that's the kind of conversation that allows for multiple things. Deals with the kinds of grief arguments that comes from opening government, but it also deals with the arguments of like how you have that conversation and what led this person to this situation. All of these conversations are much better when this person doesn't have to be completely guilt-tripped by thinking the moment I say something, these people will start crying. The moment I say something, my mom will not be able to take it. In a happy environment, that's when these conversations are most likely to occur. And obviously, the most important person who can contribute to this discussion is the person themselves who is about to die, because they know best what made them go through that decision to begin with. So I think we are the ones who involve that person in that discussion process as opposed to them. No, thank you. But finally, I think it's also the idea in terms of these suicidal people and how we have a conversation to recognize the nuances, that even in terms of like someone who went through a lot of trauma, that who feels like they have to go through assisted suicide because of the depression they're going through, that even for them, there are elements of the life that was worth celebrating. And I think that's what this adds value to. And I think this is a message that also goes towards other people who are contemplating suicide. Often a lot of reasons why some people don't often necessarily think about committing suicide is because they feel unloved, because they feel like nobody likes around them. And when they see fellow suicidal people doing that, right? So for example, in situations where they're doing it alone, or so on and so forth, right? So for example, people jumping off bridges. I'm not saying that's the Gulf comparator. I'm just saying that happens, right? So when that happens, people start copying it because they feel those people were unloved. That's what they chose to do. They got an escape. But in the world we have a going away party, I think it's a lot more, because people love and people celebrate what you did in life. And I think that's what means that those other people also feel like they also probably are people who could be celebrated for the lives they have led, and people maybe appreciate them as opposed to just feeling sad around them for themselves.
You don't want to offend your mother's going to cry. You talk about all the happy parts. How does your mother who's sad ever deal with crippling sadness?
So the grief part happens before the party, after the party, and you already feel guilty about opening up because your mom will feel that way. But in a happy environment, you might feel safe. You might feel like your mother is capable of taking it, right? You might feel about that other aspect of your life that you want to talk about. I think that aspect was also brought forth into the discussion about what are the complicated reasons why someone wanted to commit suicide. I think that nuance doesn't exist with continuous sadness and let's just assumption of all forms of sadness on their part. I don't think that happens. So next, right? On terms of this principle of degradation of death, I'll get a bit personal here. Like, my father was he was a prisoner of war. Then he got shot 6 times and he joined the military and like stopped the coup attempt. Then he taught me principles about how to respect women. He would give me little treats at lunch after school. He was a great man, right? And the thing is that once he has died and passed away, everything that everyone can talk about, or even I can remember, is the funeral, is how I cried, how people were taking down his body. I don't think we degrade death. I think death has overtaken the beauty of life. I think we must degrade death, because death doesn't deserve respect it's currently getting in society, because it takes away from the life that these people have lived, that they these people have provided to society. I think we must celebrate that aspect, and it's an injustice not to do so. Next, in terms of this argument about dealing with grief, because I think it's also sort of like I don't know what you guys feel is important. So closing opposition will only decide to do all other sides, right? So first, dealing with grief, I think it's much better when people deal with other outside. This is nice. People can deal with it because they were forced into it. Like, I don't think people feel a lot of coercion because people feel happy to do things for someone with a life dying and not close to that. I don't think people feel like, oh, why am I being forced? Because it has to be some coercion workshop and stuff, right? Because you would be happy to make sacrifice for someone after you pass. Anyways, I don't think coercion is in fact bad. But secondly, in terms of this whole thing, I think our conversations, me dealing with people, that too. Science the injection of water. I think these people are much happier and also but this people go out their own way. At least on the young world, you can tell yourself, I did it, that person doesn't want to do it. And they did it on the way they want it. And saying that allows you yourself to be able to be involved. Because at least you're happy. But the answer is, if you immediately forgive yourself, and it's okay to say, okay, I get up for some of the things I did, by the sacrifices I made for them means that I can be happy with myself. This argument of like you are last one satisfy yourself and your happiness is an illusion. Look, all happiness is an illusion. If you give me this trophy, I can buy this at a trophy cabinet for a very few dollars, right? It's an illusion. It means absolutely nothing. Social validation means nothing. Everything we go through in life is an illusion. Happiness is an illusion. Let the person have the illusion of happiness until they die. Then Alradhi talks about, oh, I know from this person's perspective. They don't know, but I know that this person will go to the last moment of sadness. Okay, so what? They would have gone through continuous periods of sadness, regardless on your side. The last moment of sadness before that is irreversible, no matter what you do. But at least that person went through knowing that there were parts of their life at the end that they were happy. These people have gone through tortured lives. The least we can do is throw a party when they want it.
Government with. Yeah.
Ready in the finals?
Yes, he is!
Is he ready for the finals?
Yes, he is!
When they told me that I would be paired up with Mirzal for KDU, as a only one month experienced debater, I was like, how am I gonna carry this dinosaur? I didn't think I would manage to go to the finals, but here I am. Kind of nervous. So how would I arrange my speech? First, I'll deal with member of opposition, followed by OO. Then I'll compare what I'll extend what Mirzal said just now in his speech. So member of opposition said that people will talk about death anyway after funerals, like after the funerals, but people are very adverse in its complicity in causing harm, because by administering the way that you are helping your friend or family member to commit suicide, you won't more. It's more likely that you won't admit to the guilt that you were the one who killed him. You were the one who caused him that harm. Because people are inherently don't want to commit to such guilt. If you give up on people, in their case, they give up on these people, but at the same time they point that responsibility to the party. Like they justify helping him committing suicide because he wanted to have a party. Secondly, member of opposition said that in a happy environment, it's easier to have a conversation than a sad environment. Like even in a sad environment, you can still have a conversation. Even in a sad environment, you're still likely to talk about. You're not more likely to talk about this important issue, like why did he commit suicide? You won't be addressing like this important issue, like how should we deal with it in the future? How should we prevent more people from committing this suicide? And next, they also said that we forget life because we forget the life they live because we only remember the last memory, which is like the body being burned or the body being put to the ground. It's not true because the mass majority of people are ill-equipped to deal with such pain. What they need to do is to deal with grief. What they need to do is to deal with death and grief in a way that what they need to do is they have to talk. They have to talk about it in some way so that they could prevent other family members or friends to do the same thing. So moving on to extension to Mirzal's speech. To us, guilt is good. Society will reflect on the issue that led to that person, that individual, to commit suicide. In their world, they celebrate it. They're pulling wool over their eyes by not talking about this issue head on. This guilt forces people to talk about this guilt in our world, forces people to talk about this uncomfortable issue. Take, for example, like when Lester committed suicide. Like if we celebrated if before he committed suicide, if we celebrated it, it'll be just another celebrity dying. But since the news was a surprise to most of us, that's why people are talking more about mental health issues in today's world. In our world, we'll be able to take this issue seriously. We'll find ways to prevent this kinds of suicide from happening again to another person. Will cause in our world will cause less death compared to their world because we're open to discussion about this issue. Whereas in their world they'll be more like they'll justify not talking about the issue because they consented to it. We celebrated. He was happy. We were happy. So how do we compare ourselves to the opening government? The opening government only talk about like stuff that was not so impactful to the debate. They merely they're just like justified. They just said like it devalues human life and because sorry sure.
If individuals are really sad and have depression from perhaps bullying or social circumstances that put them in that place, why would they have going away parties?
I'm sorry?
So like, if I was really sad and like the circumstances as to why I'm killing myself is really sad as well, and that's causing me depression, why would I host a going away party or put together a going away party?
I don't know, the motion was like, this house would regret celebrating going away party, so I assume that everybody would want to celebrate their own death. So what did I say in my speech? Basically, this going away party is like distracting people from the main issue, which would lead to people committing suicide. It distracts people from talking about it or find solution to overcome it. In our world, we would have more people that would be less likely to commit such act. With that, proud to reject.
Thank the government whip for that speech. Now for the final speech of the grand finals, can we please invite the op whip? Here.
I think what a lot of the teams fail to recognize is that oftentimes guilt doesn't come from you assisting their death, but guilt comes from you being a contributing factor to why they wanted to kill themselves in the first place. Whether or not I've been liable to making my friend or my sister want to kill themselves, whether I was supportive enough in life for me to ensure that they were happy in their lives. This is the kind of guilt that oftentimes the survivors live with, not necessarily the fact that they want that they have assisted suicide, right? I think that this sort of guilt is necessarily harmful and it can only be fixed with one thing: the ability to have closure directly from the person that you might have caused harm for. This means that the idea of guilt in of itself, of you might having been liable for your like family that is going to kill themselves, can only be solved if per se there was a conversation giving you closure and ensuring that you have ensuring that you are not responsible, or you are not supposed to take this grief till the day you die and allow this grief to disrupt your life. I'll tell you why necessarily this grief and this guilt will necessarily be harmful towards the survivors, which we openly did not talk about. We think that this grief is necessarily harmful because knowing is that you weren't there when someone needed you the most is when you constantly bring this guilt throughout your life. Your life needs more, your life needs you to be happy. Your life needs you to be responsible for other things, such as other family members, such as your work. We don't think it's fair for you to guilt trip this person into thinking that you did not help them when they needed the help, and not giving them closure when they needed to. So what does this mean? This tells you that the going away party is the only form in which you can have a discussion with a person that is about to get assisted suicide. Why? The vibe of a party allows a situation in which there is an enlightened mood. That means you are not too sensitive about anything. That means there is no hardcore filtration of what you have to say, because you know that no one is going to have hard feelings, because you know everyone is in a happy mood. We think that this is necessarily important and unique in a party in and of itself, because the question is, how do you make people open up, and how do you make people settle these things that need closure? This is how it happens. In a situation like this is when, number one, you have the ability for the person to say, oh, I am sorry, I forgive you. Although you may have done this, I forgive you. That means you can move on with your life. But secondly, what's most important is regarding what Mif's case was, regarding the discussion of how you can prevent suicide or what caused suicide. We think that it's not fair for you to have this discussion without even contemplating what the person who attempted suicide thought of. That means you, under your side, you expect a world in which after this person dies, you have the conversations among yourself and expect to guess why they killed themselves when you never had the discussion with the person. We don't think that's fair. The point at which you create an environment in which the person opens up and said, oh, you know what, the other day I was actually kind of sad because so-and-so did this. We think that is when you get to decide and get to put their opinions into the discussion. That is when you start to find out why exactly were there hints of why they wanted to attempt this suicide. We think that it's unfair for you to create an environment in which you make the people who attempt this suicide to shut up and don't allow them to open up, because we think that this is the only way that you can ensure there is closure.
So, considering that A, people have a natural aversion in admitting guilt, and B, that this thing usually has a command of not saying any negative things at this event, what makes you think that anything about suicide or depression, negative things, will ever be brought up and discussed in this circumstance?
We don't think that you can't talk about negative things, but we think there's a high likelihood of you opening up because there's no such pressure, such as number one, being sensitive to things. The comparative is this: you allow them to get a assisted suicide or suicide when everyone just shuts out, and that's it. Because you don't have the ability to create a mood in which you have the ability to have this discussion. We think that it's like, come on, like what makes you, okay, the situation in which it makes you want to open up is when you understand that there is no hard feelings in that position. We think at that point is when these discussions tend to happen, because the alternative is them being quiet or them just filtering everything they say. So you will never get to know why they really killed themselves, and you never get to know what your position was in like the process, right? By the way, I didn't find myself, so bismillah. Right, so next, okay. Why is necessarily important for like them to construct the party, right? Notice this: when you have an assisted suicide, they have the ability to construct the party they have. This is necessarily important because, like I said, it is unfair for you to take away the person who wanted this attempted suicide in like the things that it is unfair for you to keep him out of the discussion. It's unfair for you to keep this person out of like what happens and like the celebration and stuff. We think it's necessarily important for you to ensure that this person has the ability to create the terms of his death. That means if I want my mom to put in the to inject me with what will make me die, then that means that is what will make me happy. We think that you get closure and you won't get guilt from this. Why? Because at the end of the day, you comply to what your child is going through. You comply to what your child wants. We think that is the least you can. Or all your child's life, they have been suffering and you weren't there. We think that is important for you and to get closure, and in fact it will give you guilt, it will give you a happiness that at least for the few seconds before he dies, I was there for him. I listened to what he wanted finally. We think that that's super important. Why? Because at the end of the day, we think that you taking the person who wants this assisted suicide, who wants the assisted suicide, the person can finally lead a reason of happiness in which he knows that his parents or he knows that his friends are willing to come to him and help him in the case in which he wants the freedom from this suffocating life. We think that this the least you can do is supporting what they want and ensuring there is an ability for them to feel happy at the end of their lives. And we think that also countering to the idea of suicide. Notice this: oftentimes people opt into suicide because they know that there is no one there for them. We think a situation in which they know that people do care about me, and if I were to kill myself and if I were to celebrate it, who would come, shows that people are there for you. We think that the idea of celebrating someone who is in a suffocating mode can ensure other people who have suicide to think again. Maybe my mom does love me. Maybe my dad does love me. It's just that I am too scared to ask. We think that this opens up an ability for people to think that, hey, there are people for me. We truly believe that it's unfair for you to disallow the people who want to attempt suicide to not take control of the last moment of their life. We think that we need to ensure that they open up, and the only way they can is through the mood, like a happy mood, right?
I thank all teams for the grand finals. Please cross the floor, shake hands, and we are